myself. Rest, let me introduce myself. I'm the original. Rest, let me introduce myself. Rest, let me introduce myself.
All right, hey everyone, welcome to the Twitter to Turf podcast. My name is Heath. I'm here with Tami and Derek again. Excited to give you guys a fun episode. We might need to change our names though. To I was suggested that we change our name to the Couch and Chips podcast after today.
I'm so down for that. That's awesome.
The Couch and Chips. So we got some things that we'll talk about today. We've got my reaction to the Fresno game. We'll talk about the new baseball coach. I'll let Derek talk about that because I sadly don't know much about it, but it sounds like it's great. We'll talk about some of our Twitter polls, and we'll talk about attendance. Before we get, I guess, too started, I guess I can just jump into my reaction to the Fresno game, since it seemed to get some interesting reaction. I think most people were a little bit angry with how angry I was, so that's fun. So I've thought about it. Disclosure, the closer I get to games, I typically calm down a little bit because I've moved on. But Harsin did, I think as Tami put it, I think he sub-press conferenced me today. I don't know if it was directly at me, but it felt very personal. I felt like he saw my ads and then decided that it was time to let me hear it. So, first off, I wrote down a list here. I want to see if you guys can guess what they all have in common. So, Baylor, Fresno, Virginia, Wyoming, Air Force, New Mexico, Washington State.
Things that may have gotten you blocked from Coach Harsin on Twitter.
Exactly. Also, all of those games, Boise State was favored in except one, and they lost all of them. So that's where a lot of my anger came from, because for me, I was sitting there thinking about it after the game, and I was trying to figure out why I was so pissed off. And it kind of made me dive into what my expectation was. My expectation's always been, win the Mountain West, win your bowl game, things like that. But I'm trying to figure out what we are as a program. I'm confused because we have fans who will say, well, he's won, I think, 40 games, lost like 12. So he's averaging 10 wins a season. But then I look at that list and I go, what other coach, and I don't know the answer to this, it probably has to go back beyond when I was a fan, but what other coach has lost that many games that Boise State's been favored in? And then I go, well, then there's the fans who immediately after those games, they say, well, you got to support Harsin, you can't criticize Harsin. And I go, well, he's not winning games that you're supposed to win. And if we're okay with just being an okay program, then those same fans can't be mad about having okay attendance, having okay bowl games, having okay facilities, and having an okay status within the college football landscape. I don't feel like we're Alabama, so I don't feel like you can just take a game off against Fresno or lose a meaningless game against Fresno and then turn around the next week and have that same attention. Boise State has to win when they're supposed to maintain that level of excellence and that level of attention, considering where we are and who we are and all those things. So if that makes sense, hopefully that's kind of where I think I'm so pissed off with Harsin, was because I'm looking at all these games and going, how do you lose to Baylor, who didn't even have a head coach, and Virginia, who's 6-6, and everybody's trying to, Virginia's good this year, but they're 6-6, and they've lost to like Pitt, and then New Mexico is New Mexico. The only one that I think we can all probably say was okay was Washington State, but even that game they probably should have won more than the other ones because they were up. So it just, I don't know. I think I'm just perplexed when I look at that list. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Washington State game goes, I came into that game not expecting, but accepting that we might lose. And then when we got ahead by so much, I was like, oh yeah, we're going to win this. And then we lost. And then that's what got me frustrated. But, a lot of those other games, losses happen in college football. I think if we go back to Nevada and TCU, those were heartbreaking because we had rarely lost and we thought we were going to win every game. But, as we came through seasons with a couple losses, I became more accepting of losses. And I mean, I was pretty pissed off after Virginia. We shouldn't lose at home to a team like that. But I think what really got me angry about this game was I was extremely worried that our team was just going to try to coast through it, and that's exactly what I saw. And, I think I said on Twitter that comes down to coaching. That the coach didn't have them prepared, and who know? I don't even know if that got me blocked. I haven't checked, but it probably could have. But I definitely called out Coach Harsin, and I deleted one tweet where I called him a liar because after looking at it the next day, I felt that was probably crossing the line a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just watching that game, they were just going through the motions, and Darren College even said that today on Idaho Sports Talk, that they all played like they were expecting somebody else to carry the load that game, and that's what really, really got me mad. That just, I was scared they were going to look past this game, and it looked like they did.
Right. Tami, how do you feel?
So I was just frustrated as anybody else on Saturday, but I have that positive homerism streak that doesn't let me go negative in the face of everybody else being negative on Twitter. But listening to that list of games that you said, the only thing that I can think about is that this constant comparing ourselves to 2007 through 2012, right? 2011 is going to end in this anger all the time, because this team is not that same team, right? It's a different coaching staff. It's a different time. 2017 is nuts. It's a different, and Darren College said this too, that it's a different player now, right? It's not dudes that, it's kind of a little bit of me. And is that a good or bad thing? Or is that how it should be? I don't know. I feel like maybe players need to get a little bit more out of this whole thing than they have before. But I'm also a proponent of pay the players. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that this team, if you take the entire season, has struggled in parts, but they've always shown a lot of heart. And I didn't see any lack of heart out of that team Saturday, where I think some other people maybe did. And I don't know if that's just me not catching it or wanting to be positive, but, looking at Madison, looking at Ripon, watching those guys play, they wanted it. They just didn't put it together well enough, and I think they will this week.
Yeah, I didn't think, and I tried to make it when I wrote that little piece on our website. I tried to make it known. I didn't necessarily think the players. I don't blame players in that situation. I thought, if you look at Ripon, I think actually that's where I kind of came back to Harsin again. Is Ripon in that situation just on Saturday? You take any game from any Boise State quarterback in the history of Boise State, you're not going to find a performance. Ripon was on fire. He was doing a great job. And then that's where I kind of looked at it and said, you can't tell me that Harsin or Zach Hill or whoever was making those calls was in it to really win the game. Because can you imagine having Kellen on the same streak and then Coach Pete calling in, I don't know.
Mike Coughlin?
Yeah, calling in Coughlin and asking
Yeah.
Coughlin to run quarterback draws and stuff. It just seemed to me that you can't. And then the punt when we were down by 2 and you needed it, and the response. I remember, Tami, you said, well, they didn't think they could convert it, but they had. I mean, you didn't really have any other choice at that point. You just have to try to win the game, but unless you feel like it's meaningless, and then you just say, you know what, let's just pack it in and head back to Boise. And it just felt weird. I just didn't feel like the coaches, like even Avalos, who I've had such respect for all season, what was the adjustment made to that guy running that drag route underneath all game long? I mean, there was never a linebacker. If you're playing that cover 2, you're supposed to be sitting in that zone, but it never looked like they were stepping into that passing lane. It just seemed schematically just very weird. Not like the team that we had seen the last, 6-7 games. So I think that's why I just got so frustrated, because it just seems so different. Like I feel like the coaching staff played us. Like we bought in. You finally got that Colorado State game. Everybody's like, yeah, Harsin, you know what? We were wrong. You're our dude. And then you have a game like that, and it was so weird. It just didn't feel right. It just felt off.
Yeah, and you know, I said on Twitter that night too that I don't blame the players, but it you know, it does boil down to leadership, and if your leaders aren't leading the way they need to win, the players are going to feel that, and they may not necessarily give the best effort or their best effort. They may think they are, but you know, it just boils down to leadership, and I felt the same way. I felt like we were kind of played by the coaching staff too. You know, Carson came into this week saying that this game mattered just as much as any other, but it sure didn't feel like they were prepared for it.
So that kind of leads me into the press conference. I want Tami. Did you hear the whole thing? I think you listened to the whole thing from start to finish, right?
Yeah, I managed to catch the whole thing. I sat down at my computer right at the right time, so it was pretty awesome.
Okay, so I want you to just kind of go ahead, give us your thoughts on it, because it was interesting, the dynamic. He literally was just blowing everybody up. Like I said, I felt like he was shooting me down. My favorite part of it was when he blasted Ted for like sleeping through a meeting, basically. And then he fired up the transfer quarterbacks with the, you know, all in it for themselves, got to get mine thing. So what'd you think of the press conference?
I was extremely happy that he came out fired up, because if he hadn't, I think I may have been more with you guys tonight on the, oh my gosh, this is weird, what's going on train. I love this version of Harsin, right? The snarky, truthy, you know, calling out people Harsin. I think that is the guy we need to see more of the time, rather than the more even one that he tries to put out every other week at the press conference, right? But he came out firing, man. He fired at the team. He fired at the coaches. He talked about being ill-prepared. He fired at the fans. He expects us all to show up on Saturday. You know, and I don't know. I was just really impressed. I really liked there's a couple of lines there that I thought were pretty good. You know, he recognizes the problem on fourth down, right? He called it a pathetic performance, and it is. They're 2 for 16 this year. That's why I think they didn't go for it. I mean, you're at your own 40. You've got to punt it, or else you're giving them the ball back right there, because you cannot convert fourth down. I think the math was with that decision, right? But, you know, calling out the fans who have time to sit around in the middle of the afternoon and eat Doritos and talk about this. Oh, that was great. Freaking great. And the other really good quote I thought was when he was just staring at whoever asked the question. I didn't even hear who it was, and was like, backwards is not good, forward is. Just made me laugh. So, you know, I feel like he came out, and that was a press conference for mostly his team, a little bit at Bronco Nation, probably 2% at Heath. Like,
it's all right. I think I tweeted, I think he respects me more. I think I'm still not blocked, so if he saw it, I think we're like frenemies now.
I need to check to see if I'm blocked. I never did.
That was another conversation I had on Twitter, was the blocking thing, man. Harsin, one thing that I hope he realizes is he has some very adamant supporters. There was one guy tweeting at me saying that he only blocks the idiots, and that even if you think you're like the best fan in the world, that Harsin has like a secret reason for why he's doing it, because you're negative. So apparently that conversation about him and believing in positivity, if you're blocked and you don't know why, it's because deep down you're probably a negative person, and only Harsin knows about it. So, you know, it was a good press conference. I also liked when he defended Cozart, because I thought that was a really impassioned. I tweeted that it was kind of a shot at the guys who left, but really when you listen to it, it's more of a defense of how awesome Montel Cozart is. I thought that was cool.
That was really cool. You know, I think he's right about that too, man. Cozart has played a huge role for the Broncos this year. And taking him out of the game plan now is just honestly limiting ourselves. He wasn't effective last week, but that doesn't mean he won't be effective this week. So
He might be.
I don't think you need to take him out of the game plan, but I also don't think you need to, when Rippon's on fire and you're in the red zone, I don't think that's the time to put him in the game as the quarterback either. I think using him the way they have been as a running back and a receiver on the fly sweep, things like that is great for the game plan. But man,
I'm with you.
Yeah, like he said, that was a bad time to take Rippon out of the game.
It just felt weird. And I've been excited about Cozart. One thing I think I have been surprised about with Cozart, and maybe it's just we overinflate the history of Harsin as our offensive coordinator. I'm actually surprised that they haven't used Rippon and Cozart in a more tricky fashion. Like I feel like the things they've done have kind of been telegraphed a little bit. They've worked some of the passes and things like that, but I'm just surprised we haven't seen something, I don't know, more mind-blowing with both those guys back there.
Well, maybe we will this week. Maybe it's been part of the setup.
It's all coming
11
down to
games.
this game.
Right?
11 games, just setting it up.
So, I guess with that, we can move into this game, the Fresno 2. What are your guys' expectations? I'll say this, after everything negative I said, I still fully do expect Boise State's going to come out and win this game by double digits. I really do. What are your guys' expectations and thoughts? We'll go ahead and start with Derek.
I think that what I'm worried about, and they said this in the broadcast on Saturday, and I mentioned it on Twitter, is that Fresno probably gained some confidence in that game, knowing that, you know what, we not only can we play with Boise State, we can beat them, and I'm worried that we lost some confidence because we didn't execute. That's what worries me the most. Now, based on how Harsin came out in his press conference today and saying things were hashed out yesterday, which Darren College said meant that they were running some stairs today, I have a feeling they're going to be focused. So this is going to be a tough one to predict. I think home field advantage is going to help us. We all know that stadium can be loud even if there is only 25,000 people there or 28 or however many show up. So that's going to help us. And the revenge factor, if that's what you want to call it, from losing when we probably shouldn't have, is probably going to be some motivation as well. So I think Fresno's going to have confidence, but I think that we're going to be motivated. And that, with the home field advantage, may be what decides it. I think it's still going to be a close game, though.
Tami, how about you?
It's definitely closer than I thought it was going to be last week. But if the team took the press conference and what happened to them yesterday in the correct spirit, which I hope they did, then I think these guys will come out and blow Fresno away. To be honest, I mean, all they have to do is click, right? All they have to do is click in the red zone. They don't even have to do anything super special. You just have to score when you get in the red zone, and that's a totally different game last week. So yeah, 2 scores.
2 scores.
Boise wins this thing.
It's funny that Derek talked about the confidence thing, because I actually saw Jerron Johnson tweeted today that when they used to play Fresno, and obviously not the same Fresno, but when they used to play them, just when they'd line up, they knew, looking at Fresno, that those guys didn't think they could beat Boise State. Like, it was just ingrained. And I think as we talk about this transition of the program and the difference, that's one thing that I think we'd all agree upon, is that these teams now, they don't fear Boise State the way that they used to. Teams used to line up with Boise State, and there was no sense of, you just could feel it. I remember even going when Boise State played Oregon, and the swagger, we were at Autzen, and Jason Robinson came out with the hammer, and he came out and he smashed the O on the side of the field, and they were just all up in Oregon's face and stuff, and it was just there was this feeling that whoever they lined up against, they were going to beat, and it's different now. That confidence level, it is that loss. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that affects things. We had a few polls this week that I wanted to get to. Two of mine, one of Derek's. The first one I'll just brush over quickly as we're talking about what we expect. The first one was I put out there, if Boise State wins the game against Fresno, would that make you forgive what happened in the previous week where we lost? And 120 people voted, 72% said yes, 28% said no. So it looks like most fans think that we win the trophy, the one that matters at least, the Mountain West Trophy, that the week before will be kind of something forgotten. So that's something. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I do. Ultimately we all came into this week saying that this game really didn't matter. I think we all wanted the team to play differently than that, but this is the game that matters this week. So if we win that, then last week didn't matter. So yeah, Mountain West Conference Championship is all that matters. It's one of the number one goals for our team. So if we win, that's it.
Agreed. I mean, it sucked to lose last week, but winning forgives a lot of ills, and doing it on the blue for a championship even more.
Yeah. So the other one is everyone's favorite topic. We all love it. No, probably not as much as the local media, but everybody loves to talk about attendance. So it was, will Boise State sell more than 28,500 tickets to Mountain West Championship game? I was just looking, actually, I just pulled up the weather, because as much as people hate to hear it, it affects families. It looks like high of 46, low of 33, 60% chance of rain. The poll results for it were, again, over 100 people voted, 109 people voted. 54% think that we will sell more than 28,500 tickets. 46% say no. Because that's such a high amount of people saying no, I don't have a great feeling about what this game's going to look like in the stadium. What's your guys' thoughts?
Well, I think it's tough for a game like this. As a season ticket holder, I can tell you where we come from as season ticket holders, that you're starting from scratch. There's no tickets sold to this game, and during the Air Force game, my family and I were talking about, can we afford to go? Where are we going to sit? We ended up buying the North End Zone tickets for $20 a piece, so that we spent $120 for 5 of us, but. And that's a problem for season ticket holders. A lot of people budget that money for season tickets, and then that's it. They can't afford to go anymore. That being said, the diehards will be willing to spend the $20 or $40 probably. I know that my wife, as you guys know, my wife works for Boise State, and she's in charge of booking suites for the Stucco, and they don't have all the suites even booked. So I think the short notice is going to affect attendance. I don't think it will affect. I think the short notice will affect attendance more than the weather will. The diehards are going to be there no matter what the weather is. So, I think we're probably going to be right about at 28,000. And speaking of weather, by the way, when I was just looking at this when we were talking about just a couple minutes ago about the advantage in the game, the 60% chance of rain and cold weather could play in our favor as well. I think we all remember that game against Fresno a few years ago when it was raining sideways and everyone was screaming. That was a lot of fun, so that might help us. But back on topic, yeah, I think if the over-under is 28, I'm going to call it even at 28.
Okay. Tami?
Judging from the level of excitement and the amount of people who have been in my DMs knowing my situation offering me free tickets, I think we might be able to bet the over here. I think it'll be right around 30.
That would be cool. That would be really good. I hope it's a lot. I hope it's loud. I remember the last one was weird because it ended up being really warm, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
I remember I packed up like I was going to a Blizzard game, and I ended up having like 6 layers next to me on the floor because it ended up getting really warm outside. So I'm hoping this one turns out really well. The last poll question we have, and Derek did a much better job than me because his amount of votes is insane. But he asked the question, if Harsin were to take another job, who's your choice for the next head coach? Obviously, this comes up because Caves has been really super excited to make sure everybody thinks that Oregon State's coming for Harsin. I saw an article actually stating that he's probably a target now. So and then I listened to the ticket today, and they talked about it as well. Who would be your guy? So you gave 3 options. You gave Andy Avalos, Mike Sanford, and Dirk Cutter if he got fired. Avalos actually turns out winning 43%, Sanford 39%, Cutter 18% with 293 votes, which again that's a lot of votes. So that's very interesting, very telling. Who would your guys'? I guess we can steal from the ticket. You guys are basically one of their hosts, right? So we can steal their platform. Who would be your guys' 3 from 1 to 3 if you got to pick?
I would be probably in exact order of that poll, except I would probably not even consider Cutter at this point. I think he's an emotional pick. I think Andy Avalos is the best pick for it. For number one, for continuance of the program. If you lose your head coach right now, in order to keep the recruits in, if Avalos stays with the program, he's going to keep a lot of those recruits. I like the defensive mind. I think that's a great way for the program to go. I think you may have mentioned that on Twitter too, Heath, that that we've had that perception of offensive firepower for so many years that, and even though we all know we've had a great defensive teams, having Avalos take over and continue that defensive dominance would be great. I think Sanford is a great offensive mind, but he honestly hasn't. He's been okay this year, but as a head coach, but not blowing anybody away, I don't think.
I just looked at it looks like they finished 6-6. I'm trying to find what their highest score output's been this season.
Yeah, so I'm not real sure how he would do. And like I said, Dirk Cutter I think he would have been a great hire last time, but at this point, I think time catches up to coaches really fast, and I think especially once they get some time in the NFL. Of course, Nick Saban came back from the NFL pretty good, but I don't think Dirk Cutter would be on my top 3. I would consider some other people before him, like Mark Helfrich or even Bo Baldwin, who's been considered for Oregon State as well. So those would be my picks.
Those 3 are probably the top 3, but I would like to see some maybe other names that haven't popped up a whole lot. Like, nobody ever talks about Scott Huff as taking this thing over, but he's the co-OC.
Fire people up.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
We can all ride the lightning.
And there's some other coaches out there that are floating around, in the tree outside of Mike Sanford. Hamden's out there. There's a few others. So I don't know. I think that probably Avalos would be the ideal hire. But I don't think we should maybe limit ourselves to those 3.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of comments to that poll that it might be time to go outside of the Boise State coaching tree as well and find someone like Baldwin who has nothing to do with the program.
Ooh.
And that might be the way to go.
We haven't been outside of the tree since what?
Jeez.
Houston Nut.
Yeah. Yeah. Screw that. I don't even want to go outside the tree.
We're never going back to that. Yeah. When I looked at the list, I just went Avalos just for the continuity thing. I mean, he returns an entire defense next year, so.
Yeah.
And you look at those young guys he's got, and I'm assuming the rapport he's got with those guys. To me, it would be the quick, easy hires. You just keep running with that, and maybe look more like a TCU with this dominant group of 5 defense that also can score points, as opposed to kind of what we've been in, reverse, because we've always had these offensive minds. I saw one tweet today, and it's funny because we didn't even bring it up sarcastically, and this guy wasn't sarcastic, by the way. He was 100% dead serious. He said. All he wants for Christmas was for Kellen Moore to come back, be the quarterback's coach / offensive coordinator, and that would guarantee Boise State an undefeated season next season. So, Kellen still walks on water.
Yeah, ask BYU fans how that feels to have your hero come back.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, that would hurt. I had a hard time listening to I don't know. He could probably listen to this and laugh and go like, "Really, you're talking about me?" But Ian Johnson's one of my favorite players in the world, and it was hard for me just to not like his radio show.
Right.
So if Kellen Moore comes back and I don't like his offense, you're gonna have to put me on Xanax or something because it's gonna be bad.
Yeah, it would be very depressing.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like we've covered all those things. I did want to let Derek talk about the baseball announcement. So I'm gonna let you run with that because it looks like an amazing hire. Jay Tuss did respond to me and say, because I said, I don't know anything about this, but looking at just the credentials lists of his time with the Cubs and Boise Hawks and everything, that it looks like an amazing hire. So what's your thoughts on this new head coach for the inaugural Boise baseball team?
Yeah, I think it's the best hire that Boise State could have possibly made. Gary's a great guy. And it doesn't just go back to his time with the Hawks and the Cubs program here, but when he was the coach at Treasure Valley Community College, he recruited heavily in the Boise area. I had a good friend, Manu, that played for him there and just loved him to death. He's very well known in the Boise community and the baseball community here as just a fantastic baseball coach and a fantastic person. And like I said, when we announced a baseball program here, I couldn't have thought of anybody better than Gary Van Tol to take it over. And on top of that, Heath, he's Canadian, so what more can I say?
Yeah, he's great then.
Yeah.
He's got this taken care of. Tami, any thoughts on the baseball thing, or are you like me, you just kind of going with the flow and just kind of waiting to see what happens?
Pretty much. It has been interesting to watch the BSU wrestling contingent be extremely pissed about it, though. I think I saw somebody saying there was collusion in the president's office today, and I was like, no.
Oh, man.
So Gary's wife is an athletic director at Boise State. So that's probably where that comes from.
Oh, I'm sure of it. But he's also the best person in the valley for that job. So
yeah, and that's why Gary lives here. Even when he's had coaching jobs throughout the country, he's maintained his home here because his wife works for Boise State. So
okay, well then it sounds like a great hire. That's good news. I did want to bring up something too that I thought was really funny because you guys talked about Cutter, kind of jumping back to the football coaching thing, and how it's weird because his time it's gone. Like before, when it was Harsin, a lot of people were pro Cutter, including myself. But now I think everybody's kind of in agreement. But his time's passed. But then I was listening to College Caves, Prater, and Southern, and all of a sudden Hawkins, who when he left was like the devil, is now getting a ton of love. And a lot of them thought that he would be great to come back and be kind of our Mike Riley, I guess, and show back up and take things back over. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that because I just found that fascinating that Hawkins went from everybody that I can remember saying, well, the only reason Hawkins even won was because of Peterson, to now, like, I'm seeing other even fans on Twitter going, well, he's kind of doing good at UC Davis, and he was the guy that got us, really jump-started on the national scene, and so now all of a sudden he's loved again. What's your guys' thoughts on that real quick? Because I found that super interesting.
I think that Boise was a great fit for Dan Hawkins, and I think UC Davis is as well. I don't think Colorado was. I don't think the Canadian Football League was. And mainly because he's got control over a small, I don't want to call this a small program, but you guys get what I mean. There's no pro teams here. There's nothing but Boise State, really. I've met Dan a few times. He's my neighbor. I ran into him in the grocery store a few times, even though he's blocked me on Twitter. Well, not anymore. But I don't think he knows the difference between Derek, his neighbor, and Kalika, the Twitter guy. So,
that's funny.
I just think he wore some people out here, including the players, with his Zen type attitude and positivity. But honestly, if we were gonna choose between Cutter and Hawkins coming back, I would probably go with Hawkins.
Well, yeah, if I pick those two, I guess I'm going to go with Hawkins. I remember
sound like
the
you're
last
swallowing
time,
bad
man.
medicine when you get that question.
I remember the last time. I remember being so excited for him to go to Colorado and, spread the Boise State gospel to the Power Five, right? And then he just sucked. So no, I don't want him to come back. Have fun down there at UC Davis with your tiny little Division II program. You know what I mean? Be the Zen genius, whatever. But I don't think it's time for him to come back and Mike Riley Boise State. So, and I feel the same way about Cutter. I mean, Cutter, I was okay with him taking it over when Harsin came in, but I was really relieved that it was Harsin because I don't know. Cutter did amazing things for us, but he also, it's changed since he's been here. So I don't think him coming home would move the program forward.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think we really want either of them back. I think we would probably take both of them back as a last resort, but we need to keep moving forward with innovators and new ideas.
I mean, if the AD, Tennessee's this thing and comes up with, I don't know, starts spitting Art Briles at us, yes, we'll take Cutter, anybody else. But
Derek, you gotta be careful. He's your neighbor. You should be giving him full endorsements.
He doesn't really know who I am, so that's okay.
That's fine. Last thing I'll wrap up with here is one last topic that actually came in today that I wanted to talk to you guys about as well. Is since it's such a hot topic, even though we're running a little long here, is Harsin the personality. I had a fan. Look, I think his name was Jordan. I try to remember everybody's name so I can give him like a little shout. I think it was Jordan, but he was saying like that he kind of feels like there's this perception that Harsin's never got a fair deal here, and that we remember Pete as being like this softer, loving kind of like go get 'em personality that everybody attached to, and what is Harsin not done that Pete did do? And my response to him was, I don't know if Harsin does these things. He could just play everything close to the vest, but the beat coach Pete Yearly, I know he did young entrepreneur think tanks where he would with his own time go meet with young business leaders and stuff and give speeches to him and talk to him, and he would do that for free. And then obviously he did children's hospital stuff, and it felt like he was really connected to the community. But I don't know if that was just because he was a winning coach, and I don't know if maybe because he had Kellen and all that weird crazy success, did we attach that to Peterson because of his success, or was it genuine in that those are things Harsin could do to help ease the losses that he does have? I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that too, because he sent me that message and it was pretty interesting.
So I know Hars still is they do a lot of business community outreach. They do a lot of hospital stuff. That stuff is all still in it. He's just not doing a race, and to be honest, maybe he's not a freaking runner. I don't know.
Maybe we should have a beat Coach Harsin in a bench press competition.
Yes, I bet he'd do the shit out of that. I don't know. I don't see this personality problem that everybody sees with him. Not everybody, I won't say that. There's a chunk of this fan base that likes to immediately go in on him because he's not cuddly, because somehow they're remembering Pete as cuddly. I mean, I'm not crazy here, right? He was prickly in most instances where he was meeting with the press in any fashion, right?
And anybody that met Coach Pete behind the scenes knew he was anything but cuddly.
Right.
Yeah,
and so I don't know why
the first time I met
expecting...
Peterson, he was screaming swear words at us in the video room. So I've always thought that was funny because people thought that he's kind of reserved and everything. But the first time he didn't even meet me. I was excited because I'm this young intern doing video highlights and everything. He comes into the office, and my boss, who's in charge of the video film breakdown, didn't have it done by the deadline, and he lost his shit. And I'm just standing in the corner going, oh, well, maybe not the best time to meet you.
Maybe it was that he wanted it done correctly. And I think that Hars is trying to, that's what Hars is trying to keep in that building, right? That you are going to do all of these things correctly because that is how we win, right? He's not going to do it with hugs for the players like that dude from Texas last year, right? So
I think it's just I mean, they're obviously two different personalities, but I think there's a level of growing that Harson still needs. And I think if you compare the two, I think that the professionalism is where Harson needs to grow. I think Pete had that professionalism to the media, to the fans, and Harson sometimes loses that. I mean, we see that with the blocking people on Twitter. I mean, he's not turning the other cheek, so to speak, to people, and leaders grow, and I think Harson can probably get there, but it's tough to judge two different leaders against each other. You know, they're two different personalities, and they both have to go about the results different ways. So,
do you guys remember Harson telling that story earlier this year about how the first time like he went to Pete with an idea and was all proud of himself, and Pete just smacked the crap out of him for it because he wasn't prepared enough?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. I just feel like that guy remembers that story like every freaking time he looks in the mirror, right? Every time he thinks he's ready, he just thinks of, that smackdown he got from Pete that
maybe
time.
He should have remembered that this Saturday.
I'm sure he did. He didn't look like he got a whole lot of sleep this weekend. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
Man looked like he'd been running on Red Bull for about 3 days.
I'll use that as the excuse of why he just unleashed on everybody. He's had enough. He didn't get any sleep. I will say, though, since we're assuming that 2% of the shots were taking directly at me, that I'm going to take a shot at him and say, for a dude who doesn't pay attention to negativity, he spends a lot of time blocking negative people on Twitter.
Right.
So
I think he might have an assistant for that.
I honestly,
seeing as I almost applied for that job last year.
He's got to have something, because it's still so random. I don't understand it. The people, Drew, he just blocked Drew from Obnug for those funny mustache videos.
Right.
So I can't assume that's Harson. Like I just think it's some intern who's just having fun watching people react, and Harson probably just doesn't give a shit about it.
Yeah, and I just checked, and I'm still not blocked after basically pleading to be blocked Saturday. So either they haven't checked Twitter, or I don't know.
You guys are so lucky you didn't get me blocked in that shit.
We'll have to create burner accounts or something.
Tami, you were pretty pissed off at Heath and I that night, weren't you?
I was lit up, but I'm going to tell you to keep in mind that I also had like 102 fever, and we were losing, and it was bad news all around. So I decided to take it back a notch until I wasn't as sick and angry, and see how I felt. It was fine after that.
Well, I didn't take anything personal. I thought it was funny. I sent you guys a private message. I started trolling people just because I thought at that point, Raja, he's one of my favorite, because he's like the eternal optimist. Like nothing could ever go wrong. And I'll just put out a tweet sometimes. I hope he hears this. I'll just put out a tweet knowing that he's gonna bite. just for
troll.
Fun. Yeah. So, well, this was fun. We went 45 minutes this time. So, hopefully people enjoy this one. You guys got anything you guys want to say on the exit out?
Show up Saturday. It'll be fun. And in the end, you'll be happy because you'll either get to boo because they lose or cheer with everybody else because they win. So show up.
Yeah, despite my night of negativity Saturday, I'm going to be there, and we're going to have fun.
See you tailgating?
I think one thing I'll say, too, before we leave is go Boise State basketball. Looks like we're getting Hutchinson back. We're playing Chicago. Larry Loyola, I don't know. Somebody
Loyola.
from Chicago.
The second Loyola team we're playing in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so, all right, well, thanks, guys, for joining, and we'll do it again hopefully next week, and hopefully we'll get to talk about a Mountain West Championship and the Las Vegas Bowl game, and probably coaching.
Or better, maybe.
So, all right, well, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you guys next week.
Back on it, just a bomb on kids atomic, melodic when I slur and serve words ergonomic. Insomniac raps to boom bap stereophonics. It's not just a vomit out immaculate upon it. Hit these novices like a blast of hydroponics.